So before we get into this opinion video and story, let me tell you what Wagner is, or Wagner. So they're a paramilitary organization. The best way I can explain it is they're kind of like the American Blackwater. So let me explain further. Blackwater is a private military contractor. So they're people used to protect dignitaries or do stuff you technically don't want soldiers doing. Wet works, uh, just wet works. You can look up what wet works is. It's nothing kinky. It's just defines assassination, sabotage, shit like that. So Wagner is the Russian equivalent of that. They've been in Syria. They've been in other parts of the world. Wherever there's Russian influence or Russian shenanigans afoot, Wagner's usually there. So all this week, there's been all this talk about a coup. So one thing you have to always keep in mind about news within Russia, the West, and Ukraine war, always assume it's 90% bullshit and always assume it's some CIA fucking Psy OP chicanery, okay? Because both sides bullshit pretty heavily and you can't trust a single fucking thing, especially on the Western side of things when it comes to reporting a Ukraine war and various instances thereof. So what happened of the previous week was there was reports that Wagner was marching on Moscow. They were driving a convoy to Moscow, and it was a coup, and Putin had fled Moscow like a coward. And you had that little rat-faced, excuse me, you had Zelensky saying, "Oh, Putin's a coward," which, Zelensky's been going around to other countries while his own countrymen, people he claims to represent, are dying in droves in war with another state. So, anyways, so this is all going on. The media is reporting that there's missiles being fired at Russian helicopters. The Russian helicopters have blown up oil refineries and oil reserves of the Wagner group. And which, again, this is all just up in the air. Assume what I'm saying is bullshit, assuming what people are reporting is bullshit. But what cooked this off allegedly was somehow someone in the Russia military missile strike the Wagner camp where they were behind enemy lines, and this cooked all this off. But allegedly, what has happened, again, this is from what I'm hearing through a grapevine, which is heavily filtered through extra bullshit of Reddit, Western news journalists. So, Wagner, there might have been some firefights. Who knows at this point? It's anyone's guess. But Wagner signed a contract with Lukashenko for amnesty. So Wagner's going to be working with Lukashenko, Belarus, and whatever Belarus foreign chicaneries going on. If you don't know, Belarus is Lukashenko is the premier or the de facto dictator, if you want to say, or president, but he's been in charge for like 40 years. So regardless of your opinion of the guy, that's pretty fucking legendary. So basically what has happened is a whole bunch of stuff and allegations, but one of the most interesting stories is that the CIA supposedly, of course this is all rumor mill bullshit, do not take any of this with any real legitimacy. So the story that's going around is the CIA found $8.6 billion. And this is a fun story, even if it is bullshit. And if it happens to be real, sorry. But so this rumor, the story is they find $8.6 billion of taxpayer money that was missing. So they give it to the Wagner guys and say, "Oh, here, go cause a coup, stop Putin." So Wagner does that. They rattle a lot of pots and pans. They fly some helicopters around, do some, guerrilla journalism where they're walking around with like rocket launchers, machine guns, and trucks are driving around in Rostov or on their way to Moscow. But really what happens is that was all just a scheme for them to get $8.6 million from the CIA. Because if you don't know, the CIA has had some blunders in the past. Look up Bay of Pigs. And look up Afghanistan and the Taliban 1990s? No, 80s and 90s. Somewhere in there. Because apparently someone thought it was a good idea to give all kinds of rocket launchers and surface to air missiles to a bunch of fucking terrorists and empower a guy called Osama bin fucking Laden. Yeah, so again, CIA not the best track record. But yeah, they thought it was a good idea to try this coup, but it ends up being, of course, this all rumor. Of course, ends up being just a scam, a troll, if you will, by Putin Lukashenko. Now, the real story is probably somewhere in the middle. Did Wagner, yes, allegedly there was firefights between National Guard and Wagner, but again, this is through a very colored lens from reports of from social media. So again, it's one of those stories and events that has happened that probably did happen, but is mired in like 85 to 98% bullshit. But the very real thing is that there's tensions between Wagner and Yevgeny. You can look it up. His name's Yevgeny Pers. My Russian's terrible. Okay, I know his first name, Yevgeny Yevgeny Prigozhin has had contention with, and this is very real, that Ukraine officers weren't giving him artillery support when they were taking Bakhmut, so he lost a lot of guys. And I think Yevgeny is a person who sees his soldiers as his own children. So regardless of your opinion on Wagner and Yevgeny, he cares for his men, and that's more than we can say about the Russian command. So regardless of that situation, there's these oligarchical like military generals who don't give a shit about the soldiers, but Yevgeny at least has the image that he cares about his soldiers or the people under his command. And it's a very Tom Clancy-esque story of, oh, these badass mercenaries having a coup against a dictatorial president or against Putin that betrayed them. It's a glorious story that this probably happened in times past. The one I can think of is when mercenaries sacked Rome because the Catholics at the time didn't fucking pay them, so they decided, oh, fuck you, we'll sack your shit and take it. That in the 1400th century, it's medieval crap. No one probably really gives a shit, but you can look it up. They sacked Rome because they didn't pay him. So it's a very cool Tom Clancy story, and that's what everyone was thinking. That's what I was thinking at the time. I was like, oh, dude, this is crazy. No one's marched on Moscow in hundreds of years. You know, I was thinking, I even took the bait and was like buying it hook, line, and sinker. But then when the smoke settles, you're going, something smells like bullshit. And turns out I'm thinking that it's what this was. And if this was a failed coup attempt, if the story is more on the truthful side of what really happened, then the only thing it's done is unify the Russian people under Putin, and it's solidified Putin's presidency or regime, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. So it's only unified the Russian people, it's only unified the Russian military and hardened their resolve. So if this was, in fact, some kind of CIA chicanery or some kind of fuckery going on, it has backfired greatly, and you've only hardened the resolve of the Russian military command and Putin. And that's basically what's happened over the last week with this Wagner stuff. And there's tons of talking heads. There's people saying all kinds of shenanigans. But that's the information age that we live in. There's too much information, and even 10 times more bullshit out there. And I think when I was originally following this, it was just they were looping old footage of like missile strikes and oil depots in some parts of Russia and Ukraine. Anyways, no one gives a shit. But yeah, that's that. And that's what's happened the last week with Wagner. And Wagner is too special an asset to not only Russia, but the Eastern Sphere influence to just try them off for treason and shoot them. Because they're just a handy tool. They train forces and armies in South Africa, or not the South Africa, but in Africa as well. And it's like the American Blackwater, where they train paramilitaries and stuff like that. So, in that context, that's what they do. They're just another military wing that's private contractors, officially mercenaries, but today, in modern day, we can't call them mercenaries, but we can call them private military contractors because that sounds better and less haram as mercenaries. But in reality, these guys are hardcore mercenaries. And there's certain people you wouldn't want to cross on the battlefield unless if you have ample like air support, like a shitload of air support. Anyways, so that's what that was, and that's my opinion. That's I gave this alternate story where the CIA allegedly, but that's all horseshit. I think. Who knows? In this day and age, truth and fiction, who knows at this point? But that's just the through the grapevine, my own opinion. Don't take that as truth or as hardcore fact. Look into this yourself if you so can, and try and be your own judge as far as what's fact, fiction, and or propaganda bullshit. Which, if you follow the Ukraine-Russia instance, you're gonna come across just so much from both sides, and the truth is fleeting and escapes both sides. And of course, to give my own opinion here, it's all about wanting to take over Ukraine. It has nothing to do about national entity. It's who conquers the grab bag of economic shit that is Ukraine. Whether it's natural gas, rebuilding their country, securing the farmland, because if you don't know, Ukraine provides a lot of wheat and seed grain to the world. So if that falls into Russia's hand, it benefits them. If it falls in Ukraine's hands, it benefits the West. But at the end of the day, both sides have oligarchs and corrupt politicians that are playing this game and costing human life, both the poor and the middle class, in their sick game for greed and power. And that's what it is. Don't get lost. Don't become a fanatic over this crap, because you'll be used as a pawn and sacrificed. That's really what it is, unfortunately.